New York City, a city of lights, a city of dreams, but underneath the busy streets, something ancient sleeps. Deep, deep down. Far below the rumbling subways and the tangled mess of pipes, there are tunnels. Tunnels that shouldn't be there. They are not made of concrete or steel, the walls are smooth black stone, cold to the touch. They twist and turn like a giant snake, lost in the blackness. No one knows who built them, no one knows why. Sometimes, late at night when the city is quiet, you might hear a sound, a whisper, a strange hissing whisper coming from the grates in the street. The whispers tell stories, stories of a time before people, before buildings, before anything you know. They speak of a civilization so old, its name has been forgotten. They were not human, they were something else, something powerful, and they left something behind, something hidden in the dark, a secret waiting to be found. The construction workers who dig too deep, they hear the whispers first. They feel a chill that has nothing to do with the weather. They see shadows move where there is no light. Most of them quit, they run away and never look back. But some people are not afraid of the dark. Some people are drawn to it. They hear the whispers and they want to know more. They are the curious ones, the brave ones, or maybe the foolish ones. They follow the strange echoes down, 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 past the rats and the forgotten subway stations, into the cold black stone tunnels that feel wrong. The air gets thick, hard to breathe. It smells of damp earth and something else, something like old magic, and ozone. Like a storm is brewing right under your feet. These ancient passages are a maze, a puzzle with no solution. The walls seem to shimmer if you look at them for too long. Strange symbols are carved into the stone. They are not letters, they are not pictures. They look like twisted claws and screaming faces. The whispers get louder here. They sound like warnings, like a scary story told around a campfire. Go back, go back. But nobody listens, they just keep walking, deeper into the darkness, deeper into the waiting secret, and closer to a nightmare that is about to wake up. A team of scientists heard the whispers. Dr. Eris Thorne was the leader. He was a man who believed science could explain everything. He wore thick glasses and a white lab coat even down here. He didn't believe in ghosts or magic, he believed in facts. His team followed him into the black tunnels. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, making long dancing shadows. The beams slid across the strange, smooth walls. The symbols seemed to glow for a second, then faded. Thorne took pictures, he made notes, he was excited. He felt he was on the edge of the greatest discovery in human history. They walked for what felt like days. The tunnels twisted downwards, always downwards. Finally they came to a huge open space, a cavern. It was not a natural cave. This room was built. The ceiling was so high their lights couldn't reach it. In the center of the cavern stood great pillars of the same black stone. They were carved with more of the terrifying symbols, and in the very middle of the room, there it was. The thing they were looking for. The source of the whispers. It was a machine. A massive, horrifying machine. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before. The machine was a monstrous thing of metal and crystal. The metal was not steel or iron. It was a dark, oily color that seemed to drink the light from their flashlights. Green tubes, thick as tree trunks, snaked all over it. They pulsed with a sickly green light. A low hum filled the air. It was a deep, throbbing sound. A sound you could feel in your bones. It made your teeth ache. The machine looked both incredibly advanced and horribly ancient. It was a perfect, terrifying mix of technology and nightmare. Thorne and his team just stared, their mouths hanging open. Dr. Elena Vance, another scientist on the team, stepped closer. She was a biologist. She reached out a hand, but Thorne stopped her. "Don't touch it," he warned. His voice was shaky. For the first time, Dr. Thorne felt a prickle of fear. This place was older than any human civilization. It was built by beings with knowledge beyond their understanding. What was this machine for? What did it do? The low hum seemed to get louder, as if the machine knew they were there, as if it had been waiting for them, waiting for a very, very long time. The machine was a puzzle, a terrifying, beautiful puzzle. Dr. Thorne and his team spent weeks studying it. They called it the progenitor. It seemed to be a mix of things they understood and things they couldn't even imagine. There were wires and circuits like a supercomputer, but the wires were woven from some kind of metallic fiber that repaired itself if they tried to cut it. And the circuits, they weren't circuits at all. They were intricate patterns carved into crystals that pulsed with their own inner light. It was technology, but it felt alive. It felt like magic. The most baffling part was the ooze. The giant green tubes were filled with a thick, glowing green liquid. It swirled slowly like a weird slimy potion in a witch's cauldron. Bubbles would rise to the surface and pop, releasing a faint, sweet smell, like rotting flowers. Dr. Vance managed to get a small sample. Under a microscope, she saw things that made her gasp. Tiny, microscopic things that looked like little machines. But they moved like living creatures. They had tiny claws and gears. She called them demon nanites. They were part robot, part monster. Thorne theorized that the machine was a creation device, a bioforge. It could build things, or change things. The symbols on the pillars around it seemed to be instructions, but they couldn't translate them. The language was too alien, too complex. When they ran electricity into one part of the machine, the symbols flared with purple light. The humming grew into a deep-throated growl. The green ooze churned faster. It was like they had tickled a sleeping dragon. They quickly shut it off, their hearts pounding in their chests. The power of this thing was immense and dangerous. They knew they were playing with fire. A strange, green, alien fire. The machine didn't run on electricity alone. It seemed to draw power from somewhere else, from the very earth maybe, or from another dimension. It was a bridge between science and the supernatural, between what was real and what was impossible. Thorne, despite his fear, was obsessed. He dreamed of the machine's potential to cure disease, to rewrite DNA, to create the perfect soldier. The whispers from the tunnels seemed to get into his head, promising him power, promising him everything. Brandon Brenton was a soldier, or he used to be. Now he was just a man full of broken pieces. He had been in a war, far away. An explosion had taken everything from him. He came home with most of his face burned away and deeper scars inside. His right arm was gone, replaced by metal and plastic that never felt right. He had nightmares every night. He saw explosions, he heard screaming. During the day, he sat in his small apartment staring at the wall. The world he had fought for didn't seem to want him anymore. He felt useless, a ghost in his own life. One day, some men in dark suits came to his door. They were from the government, they said. They worked with a special research group. They had heard about him, about his service, about his bravery. They told him they had a proposition for him, a chance to be whole again, a chance to serve his country in a new way. They talked about a top-secret program, an experimental procedure. It was risky, they said, very risky, but the rewards could be incredible. They promised him he could have his arm back, that his face could be whole again, that he could be strong again. Brandon was desperate. He had nothing to lose. His life was already over, or so he thought. He listened to their words, and a tiny spark of hope flickered inside him. A chance to be useful again. A chance to not be a burden. He didn't ask too many questions. He didn't want to know the details. He just wanted the pain to stop. He wanted to feel like himself again. So he said yes. He signed the papers they put in front of him. He didn't read the fine print. He just signed his name, Brandon Brenton, on the dotted line. They took him away that night, down into an elevator that went deeper than any elevator should go, down into the cold, dark earth. They led him through the black stone tunnels, the whispers seeming to lick at his ears. Finally, they brought him into the massive cavern. He saw it then, the machine, the progenitor. It hummed its low, hungry song. Its green tubes glowed like evil eyes in the dark. Brandon felt a chill run down his spine. This was not a hospital. This was something else, something terrifying. He had a bad feeling, a very, very bad feeling. They strapped Brandon to a metal table. It was this cold, flat surface, right in front of the monstrous machine. Leather straps held his arms and his chest. He couldn't move at all. He looked up at Dr. Thorne and the other scientists, but their faces were hidden behind these protective masks, making them look like strange, faceless monsters. "What are you going to do to me?" Brandon asked, his voice echoing in the huge cavern. Dr. Thorne just looked at him, his eyes wide and, honestly kind of excited behind his glasses. "We are going to make you better," Thorne said. "We are going to make you perfect." The machine suddenly roared to life. The humming turned into this deafening scream. Lights flashed everywhere, and the symbols on the pillars glowed with this intense violet energy. A large metal arm, kind of like a giant needle, lowered from the machine and aimed right for Brandon's chest. At the tip of the needle, there was a drop of that glowing green ooze. It dripped down, landing on his skin. It was cold, colder than ice. And then, the burning started. It was a fire like nothing he had ever felt before, a fire that burned from the inside out. He screamed, a long, ragged scream that just got swallowed by the roar of the machine. The green ooze spread over his body, it sunk into his skin. The demon nanites went to work like a million tiny piranhas eating his old self away. They devoured his damaged cells, dissolved his scars, but they didn't stop there. They started to rebuild him. They knit new flesh, stronger flesh. They built new bones from this black metallic substance. They rewired his nerves with glowing fibers. He could feel it all, every single agonizing second of it. It was a pain beyond words, a pain that shattered his mind into a million pieces. His body began to change, to twist. His skin turned pale gray, hard as stone. His muscles bulged, becoming unnaturally large and dense. His legs grew back. Not human legs, but powerful, clawed limbs made of the same dark metal as his new bones. His eyes, once blue, now glowed with a faint green light. The pain finally stopped. But when it was over, the man on the table was gone. Brandon Brenton was gone. In his place was something new, something monstrous, something terrifying. The scientists looked on in awe, and in fear. Their experiment had worked. He stood up from the table, the leather straps snapped like old rubber bands. He was tall now, much taller, over 7 feet tall. His body was a nightmare of gray skin and black, metallic bone showing through in places. He looked at his hands. They were no longer hands. They were claws. Long, sharp claws that could rip through steel. He felt nothing. The constant pain from his old injuries was gone. But so was everything else. The sadness, the hope, the memories of his past life were like a dream he could barely remember. A faded photograph of a stranger. Dr. Thorne approached him cautiously. "Brandon?" he asked. The creature turned its head. Its glowing green eyes stared at Thorne. There was no recognition in them. No emotion at all. Just a cold, empty void. "Brandon Brenton is gone," the creature said. But the words were only in his mind. His mouth could not form them. After the transformation, he found he could no longer speak. Its voice was a low, mechanical growl, but only in his head. No sound escaped his lips. A voice that sounded like grinding rocks. "There is only zero." The scientists shivered. They gave him a name. Zero. A name for a beginning and an end. A name for something that was nothing. They had not just created a super soldier, they had created a monster with the ghost of a man inside. Zero had new abilities. He was incredibly strong. He could lift a car with one hand. He was fast. So fast he looked like a blur when he moved. Bullets bounced off his stone-like skin. Wounds healed in seconds, the demon nanites instantly repairing any damage. He could see in the dark. He could hear a heartbeat from a block away. The machine had given him power beyond any human. It had made him immortal, a perfect weapon, a living, breathing weapon that felt no pain and no fear, and the demon nanites inside him could do more. His arms could shift and change, morphing into weapons, swords, guns, even rocket launchers, all forged from the living metal of the nanites. Whatever the mission required, his body could become, but he had lost so much more. He had lost his humanity. He didn't feel hungry or tired. He didn't feel happy or sad. He just existed. He waited for orders. That was his purpose now. The whispers of the machine seemed to be inside his head all the time, a constant low hum that told him what to do. His own thoughts, his own will were buried deep, deep down. Sometimes a flicker of a memory would surface, a woman's smiling face, the feeling of sun on his skin. But then the hum would get louder and the memory would vanish. There was only zero, and zero waited. The scientists gave Zero his first mission. An arms dealer was selling weapons to their enemies. He needed to be eliminated. They gave Zero a picture and a location. No other instructions. Zero didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. The hum in his head told him what the goal was. Erase the target. He moved through the city at night, a gray shadow slipping through the alleyways. People who saw him thought he was just a trick of the light, a nightmare they would forget in the morning. He was silent. He was invisible. He was death coming on quiet, clawed feet. He found the building, a fancy penthouse apartment high above the city. The arms dealer was having a party. Music and laughter spilled out into the night. Zero didn't use the door. He climbed the side of the skyscraper, his claws finding easy holds in the glass and steel. He moved like a giant gray spider. He slipped through an open balcony door, silent as a ghost. No one saw him, no one heard him. The people at the party were too busy drinking and laughing. They had no idea a monster was standing in the shadows, watching them. Zero moved through the room, a blur of gray. He found the target, the man from the photograph. He was laughing, a drink in his hand. Zero's arm shot out, his claws were a razor-sharp blur. It was over in a second. There was no sound, no struggle. Just a glass shattering on the floor. Zero was gone before anyone even noticed the man had fallen. He slipped back out into the night, leaving a silent, cold room behind him. He returned to the underground lab. He stood before the scientists, still and silent. "Mission complete," he growled. The missions continued. A politician in a foreign country. A rival scientist who knew too much. A witness who had to be silenced. Each time Zero obeyed, he was the perfect assassin. He followed his orders without question, without emotion, without mercy. He was a tool, a weapon pointed and fired by Dr. Thorne. He never slept, he never ate. He just waited in the cold, dark cavern, standing like a statue, listening to the hum of the machine that was his master. The ghost of Brandon Brenton was buried deeper and deeper with every life Zero took. The scientists were thrilled. Their creation was a complete success. Zero was better than they had ever dreamed. With him, they could eliminate any threat to the country. They could shape world events from the shadows. Dr. Thorne was praised by the men in the dark suits. He was given more funding, more power, and with more power came more greed. The lines started to blur. At first, the targets were enemies of the state, terrorists, criminals. But soon, the definition of enemy began to change. The missions became darker. A corporate CEO whose company was a rival to one of their funders. A journalist who was getting too close to uncovering their secret project. An activist who was protesting their government contracts. These were not enemies of the country. They were enemies of Dr. Thorne and his secret masters. They were using Zero not for protection, but for profit and power. They were using a monster to feed their own greed. Dr. Vance started to protest. "This is wrong, Eris," she would say. "We created him to protect people, not to be a hitman for billionaires." Thorne didn't listen. He was drunk on his newfound power. He saw Zero as nothing more than a machine, a thing to be used. "He's not a person, Elena," Thorne would sneer. "He's a weapon, our weapon, and we will use him as we see fit." The whispers of the progenitor machine seemed to agree. The hum in the cavern grew stronger, feeding Thorne's ambition. He started planning bigger things, toppling small governments, starting wars. With Zero as his unstoppable army of one, anything was possible. He was becoming a monster himself, just without the gray skin and claws. Inside Zero, something was stirring. A tiny, forgotten part of him, the ghost of Brandon Brenton, was fighting back. With each morally questionable kill, a crack appeared in his blank mind. A flash of memory, the face of the journalist, her eyes wide with fear just before the end. It reminded him of someone from long ago. He felt a flicker of something, an echo of an emotion. It felt wrong. The hum in his head tried to crush it, to push it back down into the darkness. But the ghost of the soldier was waking up, and he was starting to get angry. The power of the progenitor was a poison. It had poisoned Dr. Thorne, turning him from a brilliant scientist into a power-hungry tyrant. He had forgotten the reason he started his work. He no longer wanted to heal or build. He only wanted to control and destroy. He believed he was a god with a monster as his avenging angel. But he had made a terrible mistake. He forgot that the monster he created was once a man who knew the difference between right and wrong, a man who had fought to protect the innocent. The danger was not just from Zero. The danger was the machine itself. The ancient alien intelligence that hummed in the deep. It fed on ambition. It fed on violence. With every mission Zero completed, the machine grew stronger. The green ooze churned with more power. The whispers from the tunnels grew louder, spreading further into the city above. It was waking up, and no one knew what it truly wanted. The scientists thought they were in control, but they were just puppets. Puppets dancing on the strings of an ancient cosmic horror. They had unleashed a power they could never hope to contain. One night, Thorne gave Zero a new target. It was Dr. Vance. She knew too much. She was threatening to expose them all. "Eliminate her!" Thorne commanded. Zero turned his glowing green eyes on his creator. He looked at Thorne, and for the first time, he saw him for what he was. A greedy, frightened little man. And deep inside Zero's mind, the ghost of Brandon Brenton screamed. No! It was a single word, but it was a word of defiance. A word of humanity. The hum in his head tried to force him to obey, but the soldier fought back. The story of Zero is a warning. A scary story whispered from the dark tunnels beneath our feet. It's a warning about the hunger for power, how it can turn good people into monsters. And it's a warning about losing yourself, about letting the monster inside take over until the person you were is gone forever. Zero stood in the lab, a war raging inside his mind, the soldier versus the machine, the man versus the monster, and as he raised his terrible claw, no one, not even him, knew who he was going to destroy, the creator or the last piece of his own soul.